Good afternoon, Year 5, and welcome to our English lesson today. So what I would like to do, as usual, is please open up your English books or your books of English at the top of the page. You've got today's LO, which is to perform a poem, and today's date, which is Monday the 25th of January. So if you could do that for me, that would be great. Thank you. And then what we're going to do today, obviously, is to perform a poem. So I'll go through what the task is in a minute. So what I'm going to do, as I always do, is just run through the poem quickly. So then you can rewind, replay, pause the video at any point to view those slides. So I'll run through them now quickly. Okay, so I have gone through the poem now, so you've got that there to view at any point. So today's task, obviously, you will be performing a section of the poem. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be choosing two of the verses in The Highwayman that you would like to perform, okay? And you're going to perform this to myself and hopefully to the rest of the class later on if you can. So I want you to choose two of the verses from The Highwayman. Now don't be silly and choose like the first verse and the last verse. I want you to choose two verses that are directly next to each other. So I don't mind which ones you choose as long as they're directly next to each other. And then what I want you to do, once you've chosen the two verses that you want to perform, that you like the sound of, I want you to practice reading this section of the poem and focus on intonation and the stress, okay? So I know you probably don't understand what that means, but we're going to talk a little bit about that later. I'm going to go through an example of how I'm going to read my verses, and we'll talk a little bit then about intonation and stress. So we'll go through that in a little bit. I would also like you then to include actions and sound effects during your poems. Okay, so if you're going to record these, send them in on a video. So make sure you include some actions that help to describe what's happening in your poem. And again, please feel free to use any props or other people to help you. I don't mind if you do this with your parents or any siblings you've got. That'd be absolutely great. Okay, so feel free to be imaginative and a bit creative with it. And then what I want you to do in your books today is I want you to then copy down each line of the poem that you are performing. And then right underneath that, what you're going to do for each line. So you've kind of got like little hints there for when you're performing the poem of what you need to be doing. Okay, so again, I'll show you an example of how I want you to set that out in the format that will be in a little while. And then most importantly, at the very bottom there, make sure that you record your poem and send in the videos to myself or Miss Hussein, please, because it's really important we get all our work, okay? I haven't been receiving all your work of everybody, so please make sure you get that sent in. So I here have chosen these two verses of the poem. So this is verse 7 and verse 8 of the second part of the poem. And what I want you to do is just listen very carefully as to how I'm reading these two verses of the poem, okay? So how I'm actually pronouncing the words and what I'm doing, okay? This should also help you to give you a couple of ideas of what you're going to be doing in your work as well. So make sure you're listening carefully. Tlot, tlot in the frosty silence. Tlot, tlot in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her finger moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He turned, he spurred to the west. He did not know who stood bowed with her head o'er the musket, drenched in her own red blood. Not till the dawn he heard it. His face grew grey to hear how Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, had watched for her love in the moonlight and died in the darkness there. Okay, so as you can tell with some of the words, so for example, like the word frosty here, I made sure I pronounced all of the sounds in the word to really make it sound like it is actually frosty. So you're describing almost the scene and things like that through the way you pronounce your word, through your intonation, okay? And you stress on certain syllables in the words, so certain sounds within the words to make that happen. So for example, on the word wide, for example, I extended the I sound in the middle to make it actually sound like it was wide. So her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one deep breath. I added a little deep breath at the end there. There's a little bit of an action, a little bit of a sound effect added in. Okay, so here's just some ideas of what I want you to be doing and how I'd like you to perform your poem. Of course, you'll be doing actions as well in yours, but I can't include them on this video, unfortunately. So finally then, when I'm just going to show you here what I want you to do in your English book. So for example, this is the first line of the verse I chose up here. And then what I've done below, I've just added some notes in of how I'm going to, what I'm going to be doing during that line of the poem. So I put banging on the table to make the galloping sound for the top slot. Okay. I've stressed the sounds in the word frosty to make it actually sound frosty, so like I discussed a minute ago, and also extending the word echoing to make it sound like it's actually echoing. Okay, so I've just jotted down some things here. You can also jot down what actions you'd like to do as well. That might be also handy. Okay, so get on with that, guys, and then hopefully you can perform some of your poems later in our live lesson. Thank you very much, Year 5. Enjoy the rest of your day.